Good evening and thanks for joining us. This is the fourth and final week of our series entitled Worried. This final lesson, we're going to focus on answering the question, what if I mess up? So, if this is your first time joining us, I'd suggest to go back and watch those previous week's lessons and then come back and go through this one. Also, if you have not already, please consider clicking subscribe to our channel. If you like these lessons, also click that bell notification so that you'll get notified whenever we post new video lessons. So last week, I had a hidden challenge in the video, and Drew Page was our winner of that. Aaron was a very close second, so he also got a prize. So be on the lookout, be listening closely. It's going to be different each week, and you might just be this week's winner. So go ahead and grab your Bible, grab your journal, something to write with, and we're going to get started tonight. Our opening question for this week is this. I want you to take some time, pause the video if you need to, and describe someone that you know that is extremely passionate about something. Maybe they're passionate about a sports team or a movie or a TV show. Maybe it's a hobby of some sort, but think of someone who's extremely passionate about something and take some time to write down and describe that person. Specifically, what are those traits that surround that passion? So tonight we're going to be looking at the idea of what if I mess up? And we're going to be looking at some words of encouragement from Jesus in the Gospels. Now, one thing that we need to know, and what I hope that you learn from tonight, is that failure is not the end of the world. It's just another opportunity for God's grace and redemption. Peter was an extremely passionate follower of Christ. Throughout the Gospels, we repeatedly see his intensity, his zeal, his enthusiasm. For example, Peter literally dropped everything in order to follow Jesus. He was part of Jesus' inner circle. He's the one that jumps out of the boat in the middle of this intense storm and tries to walk on water just to get to Jesus. He was eager. He's the one that asked the questions. Peter was all in for Christ. Well, sort of. In these passages that we're going to read, we're going to see that Peter's passion to follow Jesus takes sort of an emotional roller coaster. At the first, Peter starts off really strong and vows that he would rather die than deny Jesus, but then he breaks that vow. He abandons Jesus and lies to save his own neck. He failed, and he failed hard. But later, despite Peter's failures, Jesus handpicks him to be the leader for the church. Peter bounced back to become one of the most influential apostles, pointing many towards Christ. So instead of flunking Peter, God used his failure as an opportunity to graciously redeem and restore him. So let's read through this journey together and learn about Peter's story of failure and the redemption that Jesus offers him. We're going to start in Matthew 26 and read verse 34 and 35. I tell you the truth, Jesus answered. This very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. But Peter declared, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And all the other disciples said the same. Now let's flip over to Mark 14, verses 66 to 72. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she looked closely at him. You also were with that Nazarene Jesus, she said. But he denied it. I don't know or understand what you're talking about, he said, and went out into the entryway. When the servant girl saw him there, she said again to those standing around, this fellow is one of them. Again, he denied it. After a little while, those standing near said to Peter, surely you are one of them, for you are a Galilean. He began to call down curses on curses on himself, and he swore to them, "I don't know this man you're talking about." Immediately the rooster crowed the second time. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken to him. "Before the rooster crows twice, you will disown me 3 times." And he broke down and he wept. Now, after Jesus is crucified and buried, as we celebrated a week ago, on the 3rd day he was raised from the dead. And this last story comes from the time after Jesus was raised from the dead and before his final ascension back to heaven. So finally, let's check out John 21, verses 15 through 19. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The 3rd time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus had asked him a 3rd time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. I tell you the truth, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." So our first discussion question for tonight is this: what do you think was going through Peter's head after he realized what he had done? Again, you can pause the video now and spend whatever time you need on that question. You may need to go back and read over the story of denial in Mark 14, verses 66 through 72. Our next question is this: how did Jesus offer grace and redemption to Peter in John 21, 15 through 19? Third, have you seen God's glory and redemption in your own life? Again, pause the video, spend some time really reflecting back on your life and write down some of your moments of redemption that followed your failures. It's important that we remember and hold on to these memories of grace and redemption. If you've been following our daily devotional series that post on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings, we've been working through the Gospel of Luke. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been reflecting on the events surrounding and leading up to Jesus' birth and the early years of life. And it's been multiple times where Luke has said of Mary that Mary treasured all these things in her heart. Every moment of grace and redemption of God is something that we need and we should treasure up in our hearts so that we never forget. So finally tonight, I want you to think about this. What would it look like to treat your failures as opportunity for God's grace on a daily basis? How would your outlook on life and your emotional status change if you were not weighed down by your failures, but were able to embrace the daily grace of God that flows from the cross that we can experience through our failures? And that leads us into our application for the week. This week, I want you to do this. Identify one way you have failed God recently and set aside 10 minutes to pray for God to show you His grace through that failure. Then take another 10 minutes to write down how God may be making something good out of your failure. So to help you do this, as always, I want you to take some time and write down what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, And is there someone who can keep you accountable to doing this week? Perhaps someone, another student who's going through this series as well. Again, it's vital that we stay close to God and remind ourselves of the grace and forgiveness that is offered, which is important because Satan is constantly trying to convince us that God does not love us, that he has given up on us, that he will not forgive us. One of the ways that we can be reminded of God's many promises to us is to memorize his word. So our memory verse for this week comes from 2 Timothy 2:13. It says this, "If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself." Spend some time writing and rewriting these words and commit this verse to memory to help you stay close to God and remember his promise. And that leads us to the challenge for this week. I want you to text me a video of you saying the memory verse. The first one to text in will get a prize. So another way that we stay close to God is through prayer. Prayer doesn't always come easy. Something we need help with is to know when to pray and how to pray and what to pray about. So this week, I want you to use this prayer square to think of and pray for people you know who may have messed up or that are hurting. And with everything that's going on in our world, it should be easy to come up with 4 people who could use some prayer. Perhaps it's one of the older members of our congregation that you've been calling and checking in on. Maybe it's a younger student in our group that you have been mentoring and checking on. Make a list of 4 people and commit to praying for them this week that they would know the grace and redemption God offers, regardless of their failures. So, this is how a prayer square works. A prayer square challenges you to name individuals specifically that you want to pray for, and then list specific prayer requests. Commit to pray for these individuals for a week or even longer, and then come back to your square and that list that you prayed for and see how God has answered those prayers. I hope that this time of study was a blessing to you. I look forward to seeing you here again next week as we kick off a new series. As always, if you have any questions or needs, or you need some help with something, please feel free to call me, text me, reach out to me, and I would love to talk with you more. I love you guys, and I hope you have a blessed rest of your week. Please be safe, wash your hands, stay clean. We'll see you guys next time.